Hello and welcome back to another session. In today's video, we'll discuss about Amazon RDS, a fully managed relational database service that AWS provides us. It supports various database engines, and we are going to specifically get hands-on with MySQL engine today. We're going to stand up an AWS RDS instance and try to connect to it both with and without a public IP. Then we will discuss about read replicas. If your application is read heavy, then read replicas help in improving the performance. Next, we will see how to take manual and automated snapshots and restore them. This comes handy as a disaster recovery strategy. And then finally, we will talk about multi-AZ setup, which helps in having your database up even in case of availability zone failure. As we are covering a wide range of topics, I'll include the timings of each of the sections within the video in the description, so you can feel free to jump to the specific section that you like. Now let's get into the AWS console and get started. Okay, so we are in the AWS console now. Let's go ahead and create our first RDS instance. I'm going to choose the standard create mode today. And out of the 6 available database engine types, let's choose MySQL and go with the default version. I'm choosing free tier to keep our costs low. And you get to specify the database instance identifier as well as a username and password to connect to your database engine. And then you can choose the database instance class. For free tier, the only option available is T2 micro. In storage options, I'm going to go with the default values today, but as you can change them as per your requirements. And for free tier, the multi-AZ setup is by default disabled. Coming to connectivity section, you can choose an existing VPC or you can create a new VPC. So here I'm allowing AWS to create a new VPC as well as a new database subnet group. And the main thing is we are enabling public access. And also you can either specify an existing VPC security group or allow AWS to create a new security group. So here I'm allowing AWS to create a new security group. You have to just specify the security group name and AWS will take care of the security group rule setup. And the rest of the options, I'm just going to leave them as default. And let's go ahead and hit create database. So this database creation will take up to 10 minutes. In the meantime, what we can do is let's go into the VPC section and see what AWS has created for us. So I'm moving on into the VPC section. And here you will be able to see an additional VPC apart from your default VPC. And we are interested in two things, that is the main route table. You will be seeing a route out to the internet through the internet gateway. This is important if in case you have enabled public access in your RDS instance and trying to connect from outside the VPC. You will be able to do that only if you have an internet gateway attached to your VPC. And also this is a security group which was created. And you will see one inbound rule which allows port 3306 access from your local IP. So these two are important. Make sure that you have these in place if you are creating your own VPC and your own security group. You should both have an internet gateway attached to your VPC as well as port 3306 access from your local IP. Okay, now we have our RDS instance in available status. So let's try and connect to it from our local terminal. So the connection syntax is simple. It is just MySQL -h, then the host name, which is the endpoint, and then -p, the port In our case it is 3306 because it is a MySQL database instance. And you have to give the username -u, the database instance username, then the password. There you go. So we are connected to our MySQL instance. So once you are in the instance, you can run all your MySQL commands. I'm just running few sample commands like show databases, and you can create a database or create a table within the database. You can basically run all your MySQL commands. So that is it. So this is a simple way how you can stand up an RDS instance with a public access and connect to it from our local terminal. Now, as we are done with this, I'm going to delete this RDS instance. While while you delete an RDS instance, you get an option to create a final snapshot, and also you have an option to retain the automated backups. As this is just a test instance, I'm just ignoring those options. Okay, we are done with that. Moving on to our next option, that is creating an RDS instance without a public IP, that is without public access, and trying to connect to it. And the rest of the options is going to be similar to our first instance. So we are going to specify an database instance identifier, a username and password for your database instance. I'm going to leave it as T2 micro, and storage is I'm going to go with the default options. And for connectivity, I'm choosing the VPC which was created while creating a previous RDS instance. And the main thing is public access should be set to no. And also I'm choosing the security group which was created while creating our previous RDS instance. Okay, let's go ahead and create the database. Again, this is going to take about 10 minutes time for creation. In the meantime, what we can do is stand up an EC2 instance in the same VPC as we have our RDS instance. So this EC2 instance is required because as the RDS instance doesn't have a public access enabled, you will be able to connect to it only from within the VPC. So we are going to provision an basic Ubuntu instance. I'm going to choose Ubuntu server T2 micro because it is free tier eligible. And make sure that you put this in the same VPC as your RDS instance and enable public IP assignment so that you will be able to SSH from your local machine. And when it comes to security group, make sure that you allow port 22 access from your local IP. Okay, so let's review and launch. And while launching, just accept that you have access to the key pair. Okay, our EC2 instance is being provisioned. Let's go ahead and take a look at whether our RDS instance is available now. Okay, let's hit refresh. Still being created. Okay, now we have it in available status. So you should be having a endpoint as well as a port associated with it. And before trying to access it from our EC2 instance, let's try and connect to it from our local terminal. We know that this will not work, but I just want to show the error that we get. So this time it's the same syntax, but we are going to just change it to our new database instance identifier name, that is database2. As you can see, it fails and it gives an error saying that the server host is not known because it'll be known only within the VPC. So what we are going to do is we are going to try and connect to it from our EC2 instance. Before doing that, there is one minor change that we have to do. So we have to change the inbound rule in the RDS security group. So earlier this was allowing port 3306 access from our local IP address, but this time we are going to change that to port 3306 access from the EC2 instance security group. So we are deleting the previous rule and adding the rule to allow port 3306 access from the EC2 instance security group. Now let's go ahead and try and connect to it. So the first thing we have to do is SSH into our EC2 instance. So SSH-i and then the private key. And then Ubuntu is our username and then the IP address. So now we are connected to our Ubuntu server. So we have SSH into the EC2 instance. And the first thing we have to do is update the packages within our EC2 instance. So I'm just going to run the apt update command. So this will update all the packages which within our Ubuntu server. Once the packages are updated, you can go ahead and install the MySQL server. This can be done using apt install MariaDB. I'm using MariaDB today, but you can even go over the MySQL server. Okay, once we have the server installed, we can run the command to connect to our RDS instance. So this is the same command as we tried to connect from our local terminal. So it's mysql-h the endpoint and -u the username, then the followed by the port, and you have to specify the password. Okay, there you go. So we have connected to our RDS instance from the EC2 instance, and it again allows you to run all the MySQL commands. So you can run show databases or create a new database or create tables and basically run all the MySQL commands. Okay, so now we are done with our first section, that is creating a database with with or without the public access and trying to connect to it. Moving on, let's see how to create a read replica. So to create a read replica, you select the database for which you want to create the read replica, and under the actions you will see an option to create read replica. If you click on it, you will get a screen with a lot of setting options. It's still loading. Okay, so you can choose the database instance identifier name. So this has to be different than the actual database name itself. So I'm just choosing database-rr, and even you can put it in a different AWS region. It need not be in the same region as your RDS base RDS instance. And even you can vary the storage values, and you can even enable multi-AZ for your read replicas. And again, your subnet groups can be different than your main RDS instance. I'm just leaving them as default, and I'm going to hit create read replica. And you can create up to 5 read replicas for an RDS instance. And you can notice that your main database will get into modifying status while your read replica is being provisioned. Again, this will take about 5 to 10 minutes for your read replica to be in the available status. So read replicas is very useful when your database is handling read-heavy operations. So you will get a separate database endpoint as well as port to connect to your read replica, and you can redirect all your read queries to the read replica from your application. So now we are going to try and connect to our read replica. Again, we are trying to connect to it from our EC2 instance, because this is within a VPC. You will not be able to connect to it from outside the VPC, that is from your local. So there you go. So we are within our database read replica now. And again, you can run your MySQL commands, but you can only run read commands. You will not be able to run any create or insert commands. So if you try and do create database, then you will see this error, that is your database instance is running in a read-only option. So you will not be able to run any of the create or insert or delete commands. You will basically be able to run only the read commands. So it's that simple. We are done with the second section as well, that is creating a read replica from our running RDS instance. Okay, moving on to our next section, which is taking snapshots and restoring them. So this is our existing RDS instance, and we are going to try and take a manual snapshot out of it. So to do that, you have to select the RDS instance and click on take snapshot, and you have to just give the snapshot name. So what this will do is it will take a snapshot of your existing RDS instance with all the changes that you have in place in the RDS instance. And this will take up to 5 to 10 minutes again. So this is still being created. So once your snapshot is created, then you will have the creation time updated. So this is how you take a manual snapshot. But apart from this, RDS also creates some automated snapshots, which you will see under system snapshots. So these are the system snapshots, and you can restore from both the automated as well as the manual snapshots. So right now we are trying to restore from an automated snapshot. So this will create a new instance. It will not go ahead and update the existing instance. So instead, it will go and create a new instance. So you can specify the instance identifier again, but the password will be same as your primary instance. You will just get to specify the database identifier, which is a database instance name. And then you can change the availability zone. You can change it to multi-AZ as well. And you have the options to change the connectivity too. That is, you can put it in a different VPC, and you can even enable or disable the public access. These need not be similar to your primary instance configuration. You can change them because this is going to be a different RDS instance on its own, but it will just have the same information which is stored in your primary database instance. Okay, so now we are creating an instance from this snapshot. Again, this will take up to 5 to 10 minutes, but this is going to behave exactly same as your primary database instance. So I'm not going to go ahead and create it. I'm just going to delete it here. But once this is provisioned, you will be able to access it similar to how we tried and access the other RDS instances in our previous sections. Okay, so and also one main thing is make sure to delete the manual snapshots. You have to do them separately. Deleting your primary instance or the instance which is created from the snapshot will not delete the manual snapshots automatically. It will indeed delete the system snapshots, but the manual snapshots had to be deleted manually. And if you don't delete them, you will incur additional costs. Okay, moving on to our last section, which is RDS multi-AZ setup. So while creating a database, you will have an option to enable multi-AZ, which means whenever your primary instance fails, your RDS instance will automatically fail over to your secondary database instance, which is running in a standby mode. But this multi-AZ is available only in production or dev or test modes, and it is not available with the free tier option. So I'm selecting production here. And if you go for higher versions of the database engine, then there is a new preview option available, which is multi-AZ DB cluster, which is basically a combination of read replicas as well as multi-AZ. That is, you will be able to access your standby instance as well as when your read load workloads are high. but I'm not going to go with that today. I'm just going with a normal multi-AZ setup, wherein you will not be able to access your standby instance separately. It is just synchronous. Your RDS will synchronously load your data into a standby instance, but it will come into picture only if your main RDS instance fails. That is, your primary instance failure will result in using the secondary database instance. And you can choose all the other options. I'm going to just leave them as default, the connectivity as well as the storage options. And I'm hitting a create database option. So this is going to take again 10 minutes or so. And I have paused the video and come back, and you can see that the instance is available now. And under configuration, you will see that multi-AZ is set to S now, and you will see a secondary zone, which is US East 1B in our case, and there will be a primary zone, which is which you will find under region and availability zone. So now if we try to reboot this, you will get an option to failover. So what this means is, when your primary database instance is being rebooted, automatically your secondary instance will become the primary instance. And when your primary instance finishes rebooting, it will automatically become the standby instance now. So rebooting will not take longer now. So it will take only 2 minutes or so. It's just a switching between to make the standby instance as a primary instance. So this is very helpful in case of any failover or maintaining the system uptime. Okay, so we are at the end of the section. Hope you found this useful. If you have any questions related to RDS, please leave them in the comments below. See you soon in the next video. Thank you.